since I've already talked about the first Gothic game, I think it's more appropriate to talk about the sequel, Gothic 2. It came out the following year in 2002 on computers, and it also received a Nintendo Switch release 2 months after the release of Gothic 1 on Nintendo Switch, which is, I think, is kind of bizarre, but at the same time, I think it'll give enough people to play if they also consider getting the remake of Gothic 1. Once again, the sequel is developed by Piranha Bytes, and the game also received an expansion pack called Night of the Raven. It's also included on Gothic 2 Gold, but also on Nintendo Switch. Now, for those who are wondering, when you play the expansion pack on PC or whatever, or just the game in general, the background is completely different, but on the Nintendo Switch version, the background is the original version and not the expansion pack one. But despite that, the expansion pack is included, and you can play at the beginning of the game if you really want to, but you're gonna need to level yourself up for some parts. Now, there's 6 chapters just like the first game. You resume playing as the same guy who's whatever his name is. Anyway, so the dragons came to invade the world, and it's your job to take down the dragons alongside your returning friends from the previous game. Now, the game also has some brand new, well, it has more side quests than the original game itself, which I kind of felt like the first game lacked side content. This one seems to actually take the feedback seriously and adds a lot more quests for you guys to play, find some more new enemies to fight, and several more things to do. Now, it was said that Night of the Raven is more difficult than the original game, but I don't find this to be true from my experience. It could be because I have a good armor set and weapon set, but again, I haven't found any complaints as to why people think it's more difficult. Or maybe they just like to say that, and then it may give you more interest into playing the expansion pack. Now, unlike the first game, I've pretty much gotten less game crashes than the first game, which is a good step. The second thing is that on the Switch version, you could choose to play in either performance or graphics mode, unlike the first game. Now, for the game itself too, is that I managed to find less glitches than the original, but it doesn't mean you're not gonna find glitches. At one point, I got stuck on the floor for some weird reason, and then when I was playing the expansion pack, I went up to the sky, fell, and died like twice, and I don't know how that even happened, even though I was walking at nothing. It's weird, but whatever. But yeah, the expansion pack has a brand new world and a new campaign for you to stop against the Raven, and luckily enough, I managed to defeat the Raven one try, and he nearly even killed me too, which is crazy. So the one thing I would just mention is that your currency is no longer ores, it is gold money. Yes, gold coins. I find this to be a little bit more easier to grab money than the first game itself. Mainly because you have to choose a job for you to have an apprentice. Now, there's one where you can sell fur to a place and they'll give you money. And there's one that has like the whole blacksmith stuff or whatever else there is. You talk to the 4 apprentices and you can go to the upper quarter, and then you could potentially be a mercenary or a paladin. So yeah, unlike the other games you'll probably be playing with the Piranha Bytes stuff, there's only 2 factions in the game, and that's pretty much it. Now, thankfully, there are some enemies I managed to find a lot easy this time to defeat. For an example, the zombies don't act like, well, tough when you fight them, and I managed to beat them easily. Same with the swamp sharks, unless they team up on you, but still. I just find this to be a good way to like fight enemies, but sometimes the game can be a little bit exploiting when it comes to fighting the enemies. Now, I just want you guys to know this, is that you should definitely take the same advice I gave you in the first game when it comes to saving, and try to come up with a strategy and save every time you kill an enemy, and you should still really do that. But the good news is that whenever I load up a game, I no longer have any of those game crashes. But for some reason being, I had crashes related to the goblins. Sometimes if you were to take the stuff from them or whatever, it would crash the game for whatever reason being. It has the eating sound effect instead of you picking up the thing or whatever. Another thing is, I went to open up a locked chest and it was more difficult, and all I got was a fish, and after that the game crashed. I don't know what it is, but there's something wrong with the goblins every time you pick up their own stuff. Now this game also has like somewhat of a updated combat training and whatever, or whatever it is you can say. The reason I'm saying this is because whenever you start fighting now, it's like, it's the same old thing, but training is a lot harder than the original. The original game only had 2 levels. This one seemed to have taken the training curve a lot further than it should have. There's different ranks in terms of like training yourself. There's one-handed, there's two-handed, you have the crossbow and the bow, just like the original game. And you also can learn how to hunt, just like the original game. But the only thing you should know is that the acrobatics has been pretty much absent in this one. I can't really blame it because whenever I did the acrobatics, instead of regular jumping, you just dash in front, so making it look like you're rolling or whatever. But the only problem is, I found it's completely hard to jump over obstacles. So thankfully they got rid of it, but you can place it back via a mod. Now the original base game has 2 different worlds, one's the old and one's the new. The old one is basically based off the first game that you are at, so you basically should know where you're going. And the other one is the new world, where it has its own village cities, there's farms and whatever, and some brand new exploration of caves, some brand new enemies to fight. But once you reach to chapter 3, that's where things are really difficult. For example, in chapter 3, you'll be greeted by a black hooded dude known as the Seeker, and those things are really overpowered if you don't have the right material, because these things are really hard to take down. Even though the XP is pretty rewarding, it's still difficult for you to take down, because if they do something to you and they possess you, then, well, you're not going to be yourself. Big problem with that is that when you try sleeping, your character cannot sleep and just refuses to sleep because of nightmares with the thing. There's also shrines you can pray in the game, which can give you some bonuses. But in terms of trying to get rid of the things that the Seekers give you, you can talk to one of the fire mage guys or whatever, and they'll give you this healing potion thingy, which can pretty much release you from the thing. So use it wisely. They only give you 2 bottles for some weird reason, but the price is pretty, well, it's 300 coins for whatever reason being, even though you've been helping them. I also saw some stuff about people saying that the dragon fights in this game are completely broken. And I wasn't even really sure at first what they meant until I actually fought the dragons. These things are pretty broken. I don't know how this even got passed by with the whole thing, but if you have the good amount of level and whatever and a good weapon, I think you should have no problem taking down the dragons. But I should just mention to the fact that the dragons themselves are, well, they're powerful. They're dragons, of course. But yeah, they can be pretty tough when it comes to fighting them. And I'm not kidding when I say this. You better start grinding if I were you. And when people say this game's up better than the first game, I can actually see why, since it has more content than the first game itself. And look, Piranha Bytes is not known for expansion packs or whatever, but considering they've made the Night of the Raven expansion, it gives you a lot more reasons to play the game, as there's a lot more exploration, some new enemies to fight, and some brand new locations to pretty much do whatever. Now look, if you guys are playing the DLC expansion known as the Night of the Raven, there is a special weapon you can get after defeating the Raven, which you can pretty much upgrade every time you level up by going to the Belar Shrine, which is pretty much a, well, it's a blue one of the shrine or whatever. But here's the thing, even though I say you can upgrade it, which is a pretty good weapon, and you can't kill the final boss with it. The game will even mock you if you even try doing it. If you guys have played the first Gothic game, you'll have the idea as to how many hours you'll play. It might be around the same exact same thing, but I think mine was a little bit less than the first one, only because I kind of knew what I was doing this time in terms of combat and everything else. So it's like I said before, the game has so much to explore. You can even choose whichever faction that you can play. It affects your playthrough, but doesn't affect the ending, which is something I should pretty much mention. I did the Paladin one, and getting towards the end of the game was pretty easy. Because if you guys were to choose the mercenaries, then getting to the end will be a little bit more difficult than you could imagine. So it's just something you guys should be aware of if you're going to play as the mercenaries or whatever. So after completing the game would then tease a upcoming sequel. That would be Gothic 3, which is still stuck on PC. And I do have the game, and I will go on to play and talk about it at some point once I get done completing it. So yeah, the ending teases the sequel, and it pretty much did come out on PC, and it would have a terrible expansion pack. But several years after this game came out, there was a mod called Chronicles of Mirtana, which is pretty much more of a, well, you could consider it a prequel to the series, you can say, which if you guys do get this game, then definitely check out the mod. It's available on Steam and GOG, or anywhere else as well. Sure, it doesn't have the English language pack in terms of voice casting, but the subtitles are there. But you can also play, if you want, just silence and whatever. Or you can actually do Polish language or Russian language. And the game is getting a brand new update soon enough. Not this game, the Chronicles of Mirtana. As it's gonna set to get like a hardcore mode and whatever, so a lot of people, I think they consider that mod better than this game, if I'm correct. So if you guys are thinking about playing that one, then go right ahead. What I should mention is that on PC, Gothic 1 and 2 uses the keyboard, but controller-wise, no. But can you configure a controller to work with the game? Sure. But you have to know like what you're doing with the control schemes and whatever. So, Gothic 2, it's a big experience since it has a complete different set of worlds from, if you're playing the original one, you're playing 2 worlds, but if you play one with the expansion pack in it, that's 3. So it's just something that you can keep going with. Hopefully at some point I'll talk about Gothic 3 and its other stuff soon enough once I get done playing those ones. But yeah, one day I'll cover Gothic 3, as it's considered to be like a mixed bag in some sort. Some people like it, some people don't. I did play a little bit of it and I can see why, but don't worry. You'll get there one day with that one, but if you guys have consoles, then Gothic 1 and 2 is available just for you on Nintendo Switch. And like I said before, there is going to be a Gothic remake, and apparently they're also going to come with new content for the remake itself for the first game. But if the first remake succeeds in every step of the way, then hopefully we'll get Gothic 2 remake, which also should come with the expansion pack, hopefully. I'm not guaranteeing it. So no matter what, get the best armor and weapons you can, and then destroy everything that you can possibly get in the way.